Welcome, friends, for this Friday morning live stream with the Empty Cloud Monastery. We are experiencing the soft-minded state of being in a wonderful winter retreat. So the person who usually schedules this monk chat didn't schedule it. We just put it up a couple of minutes ago. Welcome, Manal. And if there are any questions, post a question onto the chat and we will answer. So here's a question from Tinnery. How do I strengthen my focus when studying? Any advice on this self-discipline? I actually believe that the lessons that are regularly given to college students about how to study are quite relevant to studying the suttas. So when listening to a talk, it's very good to form a matika, or a list, an outline of the main points that came across in the talk. If the teacher allows you to take notes during a talk, okay to take them by hand, not on a device. And then after the end of a talk, very helpful to take some minutes, which can be typing on your device if you so choose, to review what you recall as being significant in that talk. Then, when reading, excellent to do active reading. I know that many advisors suggest taking marginal notes in the paper books that you have. If the book is not your property, then you shouldn't be writing on the margins of the book. In the website called Reading Faithfully, our friend Bhante Kemaratana also has got many suggestions about reading the suttas. He recommends, well, there's two approaches, which one is to, in a sutta, highlight two types of sentences. One is the sentence that seems very meaningful to you personally. And another is a sentence that, if you were trying to explain the sutta who somebody didn't know about it, this would be the sentence that you would highlight. So one is that you would, summary that you would give to someone who doesn't know the sutta. And another one is the points that are significant and meaningful to you. Then the last suggestion that my friend Kemaratana gave many years ago is keeping a diary in which you take the sentences or paragraphs from the sutta that are very meaningful to you personally, and you copy out those sentences into a journal. You may keep a separate index that goes by subject or by topic or by theme for the things that you've discovered and copied down for yourself. But do not write down your opinion about this passage. In 5 or 10 years, your understanding and your opinions is going to change substantially, but the Dhamma doesn't change. So the journal that you've kept of the Dhamma sentences of the Dhamma passages that are meaningful to you is something that you can keep for life, and they will always be useful for you. So then in the future, if you're ever looking for renewing your own inspiration, or if you're ever called on to give a Dhamma talk in the future, you can open the book up and quickly find some passage from the Dhamma that was meaningful and important to you at one time. So when studying the suttas, do not read while lounging about, slouching, lying in bed, eating food, drinking tea, and so forth like that. But instead, you should be in a upright and respectful posture, as if you were hearing a Dhamma talk from the Buddha himself. You would really be respectful at a point like that. And that's what the suttas really are. And so having that upright and respectful posture also helps to pay attention. Those are my suggestions about becoming more focused. We live in an era of distraction, and if a person is keeping notes on their computer, I do this for every subject or every theme or every idea. I set up a resource page about that subject, and I put all kinds of links to anything that I discover about that subject or that theme. Could be passages in a sutta, passages in some scholarly book, links to some talk or something that I found online, and then going back again and again because the same topics and things come up again and again. Then those outlines can be fleshed out and developed. That's my suggestion about that. Thank you for asking. Random Ramblings asks, greetings. How do you know when to cease medical care for sick and dying cat? And is syringing food water in the mouth cruel if extending life and suffering? It's a very not that easy to know about an animal's wishes, since they don't speak to you in your own language. However, cats and all kinds of pets and animals do communicate very clearly. When a pet is responsive to you, then you may take that as a sign that they're willing to stay around for a while longer. If a cat is welcoming food and water and swallowing, taking the food and water, you may take that as a sign that they welcome it. If the food and water is causing the pet to become ill, then it may be time to stop. And if the pet or the animal is not responsive, not responding, and not welcoming food, water, then it's okay. It's time to stop. At the end of life for any animal, including the human animal, the body doesn't require food anymore. The organs of digestion will be closing down, and the various, functional parts of the body will be closing down. And so then that's a natural process, and it's quite all right to go along with that process. One should be aware that in caring for a dying animal, we're also taking care of our own heart and our own affection towards that animal, and to mindfully be aware of our side of the occasion, but not to be imposing our own anxieties or needs on our dear pet, but to be willing to let go and willing to know that when it's the right time. That's my suggestion about that. Here's a message from Chintana asking about the history of the Dhammapada. Quite a good question. So the Dhammapada is part of the Khuddaka Nikaya, which is the last collection in the suttas. So it's a collection of smaller, miscellaneous short texts that didn't make it into the four major collections. The long discourses, the middle length discourses, the connected discourses, and the numerical discourses are the major collections. The verses in the Dhammapada I think many or most of them appear elsewhere in the suttas. So many verses from here and there in the suttas were collected and gathered together into this short collection. So the Dhammapada has got some verses that are quite old and some that are late. It's kind of a bit of a mixture or a hodgepodge. Then at a later period, the set of stories was collected. I would take those as being sometimes less important, something that was added later to give an explanation for the verses. So the verse was there, and then somebody either remembered or recalled some story about the occasion for that verse having been recited. The Dhammapada stories are frequently very touching and very heartwarming, and I'm different than most people. Some people have an idea that something that was collected and written down after the Buddha's lifetime, that was not actually a Buddha Vachana or the words spoken by the Buddha, is unimportant, don't have to pay attention, insignificant. We could even don't take those seriously. But to my heart, the first generation or the first couple of generations of disciples who were living during the Buddha's lifetime, or who were born like in the next generation following the Buddha's lifetime, they were so close to the actual speech of the Buddha, and there were so many fully enlightened arahants around, and they had so much gain and benefit, so much opportunity to fully realize the realization of the liberation that's the fruit of this path of practice. And those practitioners had a lot of processing to do because they had lost their teacher. They had the teacher who was the greatest of the great, the best teacher in the world. And his life came to an end. And so the whole world was bereft and sorry to have lost their teacher, to have lost the opportunity to be around one who was so skillful that he would know exactly the right medicine to be used for a disciple in order to bring them to their full awakening, if that was possible. And then as a result of that, there was a concern for the teachings of the Buddha to be preserved and protected, for them to be accurately remembered, for them to be practiced in accord with the teachings of the Buddha, for them to be not falsified and not confused, but both remembered accurately word for word and also practiced by the humans in accord with the way the Buddha advised to practice. And so everything that was done in terms of the writings that came after the Buddha's lifetime, the commentaries and the stories and so on, was done with complete sincerity and wish and desire to preserve and protect the teachings of the Buddha. And so even though we know that there was a evolution in the understanding of the Dhamma, and then there were debates even hundreds of years later in which some critics would have said, no, the first generation or the second generation after the Buddha got confused and they went in the wrong direction. And they were taking too much of a materialistic approach or a rigid approach to the Dhamma, or they got confused about something. But even when those later debates were happening, it was because the sincere practitioners were trying to come back and be authentically in touch with the original Dhamma that was discovered by the Buddha, pointed out and explained by the Buddha. And so in that way, I try to approach all of the canonical teachings and the commentarial teachings. The Dhammapada stories are all part of commentary. I take them all with a sincere heart and open mind, and look for whatever benefit I can find from it. I especially recommend, among all the suttas taught by the Buddha, the things that were repeated again and again are the ones that are really important, that the Buddha was trying to make us remember. And so he repeated the same teachings multiple times again and again. And then when we find in the Dhammapada verse verses that reinforce and support and make the teachings of the Buddha memorable and make the teachings of the Buddha go to the heart by being put into the verse format, those Dhammapada verses are very good to remember. That's my idea about that. Guys, our friends, any advice on investigating thought in meditation? I find that thought either quiets down in concentration or I get lost in it. When a person gets lost in thought, meaning that the discursive thought has become so dominating that they are no longer mindfully aware of the other parts of the five aggregates. They're not aware of the body, not aware of their feelings, not aware of perception, only aware of discursive thought. Then that thought has become kind of like a blanket that is taking us away from mindfulness. So if that happens, as soon as you notice that, if you would then briefly acknowledge what was going on, try to look back in order to understand what's going on in the mind when the mind gets carried away by thoughts. If you can look back, you could sometimes get a glimpse of what was behind getting carried away by thoughts. It might be that sensual pleasure or anger or fear or anxiety or restlessness or physical pain or something like that was underneath those thoughts. This is what I believe is the way thoughts come to be, is that there's some feeling comes up or some basic perception comes up or some vijnana moment comes up that's like even before the perception is formed, just seeing there's a color and a shape, but you don't have a perception what it is. And so it's the nature of the human mind that is trying to jump in and explain the experience. There's a story that I like to tell about myself. Many years ago, when I was a newcomer to meditation during a long retreat, I happened to have gotten a medical prescription, a medicine to take every day, shortly before I started this long retreat. And what I experienced during the retreat was heart palpitations. It was secondary to the medicine. I discovered this later, but I didn't know that at the time. Instead, I would just be practicing meditation, and the heart would start to go. And what I observed was that I would get this thought. The first thing I noticed was a thought that I'll never succeed in meditation. A thought of a very negative, despairing, depressed kind of thought. Oh, this meditation is too hard. I can't do it. And then 1 second later, I would notice the heart beating. And what I concluded about that was that before the mind cognized that the heart was going, before it consciously was aware of what was happening to the heart, it had already jumped in and started to spin out a story to explain it. So that's the way these stories get triggered. So it's worth investigating the thought process, but you don't want to stay for a long time carried away in thought. If your mindfulness is evolved to the point that you can hold a thought at the same time of holding the full mindfulness, that can be a positive thing. So keeping the thought of loving kindness, for example. Okay, so that's a thought. So you've intentionally brought up the thought of loving kindness. And as you do so, you're aware of the whole body-mind, like what's happening with the body, what's happening with the feeling. You're like fully mindful while that thought of loving kindness is going on. And so in that case, it's possible to keep a very wide focus of awareness while a thought is happening. It's also true that if you're aiming for samatha meditation, for tranquility, that really wide focus of mindfulness is not what's desired, and one may choose a narrow segment of the total experience, and just be aware of that and ignore everything else. Let everything else stay in the background. So if you're aiming for shamatha and you're meditating on the breath, you are aware of the in and out breath at the nostrils or at the belly, and aiming to just keep the awareness there. And any thought that comes in, don't pay attention. Just ignore it. Or as soon as you know the thought, don't investigate it. Just forget about it and come back to breath. So while you're aiming for, it depends on what you need at the moment. If you're aiming, so sometimes you may choose to try when a thought comes up to do that investigation of where this thought came from. Not for a long time, not ruminating and spending 5-10 minutes thinking about your thoughts, but just for a couple of moments to look and see and understand what was going on. But then at other times when you're aiming for concentration or aiming for shamatha, if that's the aim in that practice, then ignore the thoughts. Here's a question from Ashish. For someone beginning sutta study, is there a suggestion or recommended order to study them in? Also, is there a sutta that is very meaningful and close to you? My personal most and important sutta is the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta, the exposition of the elements in the Middle Length Discourses, because of the poignant framing story, the powerful guided meditation, which is given in several parts within that sutta, and the powerful insight into the goal of our practice. For beginning sutta study, if you choose to take a summary, like Bhikkhu Bodhi's anthology in the Buddha's words, or Bhante Thanissaro's anthology, The Wings to Awakening, an approach like that is okay. And if you are interested in simply reading suttas, we generally suggest the middle length discourses as a good starting point. And if you read the middle length discourses, skip number 1, start on number 2, read from number 2 to the end, and then go back and study number 1. The main thing is to read the suttas consistently. If you have time to spend a certain amount of time every single day reading the suttas, that's very beneficial. Okay, reading the Yamaka Sutta and having trouble with it. So let's see what the trouble is. I don't see the difference between Yamaka's annihilation argument and seeing all of the khandhas as suffering that has ceased and disappeared. So, to my understanding, the annihilationist perspective is that there is a self, and the self is annihilated at the end of the lifetime. And the eternalist perspective is that there is a self, and the self doesn't die, but it goes on from life to life. The middle way perspective is that there is no self, but that the apparent self is an image that is continuously arising. This apparent image is continuously arising and being created because of causes and conditions. And also, as the causes are constantly changing, that apparent self is continuously changing, but it's only an appearance. So if you have that annihilationist point of view, that you believe or you assume, like psychologically, you assume, you depend on psychologically, you've acquired an attitude that there is a self, and you've accepted that self is going to go away at the end of the lifetime. Then during this lifetime, you get all of the suffering that arises from clinging to a self. But if you're practicing the middle way, you don't get the suffering associated with clinging to a self during this very lifetime. You're liberated from suffering now within this lifetime. So that's the difference there. Here's from Manal. I recently listened to a talk regarding intermediate existence when someone dies and exists in a holding space before rebirth. Would I provide some understanding why this may occur and what purpose it may serve? MN 130 appears to mention something similar. Well, I'm personally, I think that the idea about an intermediate self comes about because of the actual lived experience that people have with their loved ones after they die and pass away. It's very common to feel the presence of that individual shortly after their death. The most outstanding personal experience I had with that is the death of my younger brother. I was there in the room with him, so he didn't visit me after his death. But 3 of his friends who were far away received visits from my brother just at the moment of his death. And so this may happen, but whether the explanation is that, like when we speak about the dying process, at what time do the medical doctors declare death, and is the person really dead at that moment, or does the death happen more gradually than that? You know that, after a person is declared legally dead, their fingernails are still growing. and they may appear that there's no electricity, coming out of the brain, or that the heart is not beating. But we don't really know for sure whether the dying process has been completed. So it's possible that someone is what they call intermediate existence, is something that's that the mind is capable to leave the body, and a moment's close to death, just as it's also possible for a healthy person who has those superhuman abilities to have their mind to leave their body, and just as easy as a strong man could flex his arms, they're able to leave the physical body and visit somebody else far away. Then another explanation of this kantaba, or this intermediate existence, could be its own lifespan, which could be a short lifespan between one life and the next life. In the Theravada, there is, I think, the doctrine of the Theravada is that rebirth is instantaneous. So whatever the moment is that this life is finally finished, that the rebirth is instantaneous. That energy, if it's still has the karma or the will to go towards another life, that another life will arise from that. And then in the Tibetan tradition, there's a very well-developed idea, many ideas about what's called bardo, or the intermediate existence, and trying to create the circumstance so that the being who's in that intermediate existence will be okay. I recommend that when your relatives die, or when your loved ones die, if you're taking care of them, if you would have the room to be not brightly lit, and to have it be quiet and peaceful, and to not be in a huge hurry, to have the medics come and haul them away, put them in a Ziploc bag and rush them away, but instead to allow some kind of a decent interval that the body can just rest after it's deceased. I know that in some cultures, there's the idea that death process goes on for a day or longer, and it's possible to make the room very cold, and to allow the body to rest for a longer period of time. And to my understanding, if that's your belief, that these days that the hospital will respect that wish, and they won't insist on immediately, having the medics rush in and roll the body down to the freezer. What exactly the explanation is of that state when the body is completely shut down, or almost completely shut down, or when the death process is complete, I don't know the answer to that, but I think it is good to be sensitive that even if a person is not responsive, then nevertheless what's happening in the immediate environment could be disturbing for them, and to allow them to die in peace. Anyone at the end of time? Could you speak a little bit about how to interpret the story of the nun Suba? So she's alone in the forest, which is very interesting because we have a Vinaya rule, which is sometimes interpreted that a bhikkhuni is not allowed to be alone in the forest. So how does she happen to be alone in the forest? Well, it could be that this event occurred before that rule was established. So the man tries to seduce her, and she responds by plucking out her own eye. The man is saying, "Oh, your eyes are so beautiful." And says, "Oh, it's so beautiful. Okay, here's an eyeball." So I would take this as being an apocryphal story, which is given to make a point, and it's a very radical point about how the asubha, it's the asubha meditation. So when you're carried away with the sign of beauty, and then that unwise attention to beauty causes greed and desire to overwhelm the mind, and one can protect oneself from being overwhelmed by greed by doing the asubha contemplation and looking at the eyeball as it's plucked out here in the palm of the hand, rather than being located within the form of that beautiful person whom you desire to have pleasure with. The teaching of the Buddha, part of the middle way, is opposed to mortification of the body. So it's for that reason that I claim that this story is apocryphal, or that it would be violating other aspect of the Dhamma for a person to literally pluck out their eye. Is this continuing? To me, discursive thoughts feel strongly as self, more so than other things. I can infer that this is wrong view, but hard to see it directly. Is the way of practicing to know this directly. Right. Yes, that's exactly what thoughts are doing, is reifying and reinforcing the story, which is the story of me. I like to joke that it's the greatest story ever told. When I was a young woman, I used to love stories and novels and reading, and I read War and Peace, and I listened to the Ring Cycle by Richard Wagner, which is 5 operas in a row, like many hours of dramatic storytelling. I've read all different kinds of like mythology. And I used to enjoy all of these things when I was younger. But I like to joke that the best story of all is the story of me. That's the one that's so important. And one way that it can come up very dramatically would be during a meditation retreat. If you are deconstructing the self by observing non-self in the 5 aggregates, or observing non-self in the contact of the 6 sense bases, and sitting in retreat, doing that contemplation, doing that meditation, and then something happens. Somebody sits on your seat in the meditation hall and they steal your cushion. I'm just giving this as an example. Then all of a sudden, here's the self. Comes in instantly, or even like the lunch bell rings. And as soon as the lunch bell rings, all of the deconstruction, like the whole story of the self is like falling apart while doing that contemplation. And then all of a sudden, whoop, it all comes together, says, oh, let's go have lunch, mama. And so it's just, you have developing the perception of non-self, or developing the perception of danger in the self. Maybe that's what we need to have, is the adinava, seeing the danger in the self-delusion. And you start out with a theory or a concept, an idea that you've heard about it, and you think and ponder and get a reasonable understanding of that idea, a reasonable acceptance of that idea. And then you have experiences like the 2 little stories I just told. And then retrospectively, you can see and ponder and reflect, and you may be able to see reflexively what the danger was in the way the self came on, jumping up on those occasions. The self-delusion came jumping up on those occasions. And then you just continue to watch and continue to watch. And then it may be that sometimes from time to time, if you're very mindful, you may be able to observe directly right in the moment how the self-delusion jumped up. Or even better, if you're very mindful, you might be able to observe what happens when the self-delusion falls apart. And that experience of freedom, that experience of relief, that experience of like the pressure taken off in a certain way when the self-delusion falls apart. And so then, occasionally, once in a while, for a minute, you can see it. And then a lot of the time you can't see it. But then you just continue to be mindful, continue to observe. And then you might even be able to take that as a theme. So it's like for 24 hours, my chore for today, my mindfulness chore for today is, what's up with the self-delusion? Is it operating or not? And then you may gradually be able to notice it more easily and more regularly. This is what's referred to like in the Girimananda Sutta. The Buddha said that one should develop the perception of non-self. This is what I mean by developing a perception. It's actually, perceiving something is not just something that, it's not only something that happens naturally, it's also something that can be cultivated intentionally, that a wholesome or a beneficial perception, that you can become skillful. You can become a connoisseur of the self-delusion. You're a gourmet aficionado of the self-delusion because you spend so much time examining that you become an expert. You've got a PhD in the self-delusion. And And so then you can see easily when it comes up. And then eventually, for some reason, because you've been developing this Bhakti practice, there's something like deep within that was hanging on to that delusion. And that deep holding will fall apart. And then you'll be able to peel the onion and let go of layers and layers of self-delusion. So that's how that goes. But yes, indeed, a discursive thought is very much involved with self-delusion. Okay, so we came to the end of our questions, and timing is perfect. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for your kind attention this morning. And we will close by saying sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.